Hello, everyone. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer. This is double coverage, and we're back after the summer vacation. We're going to talk Mississippi State and Ole Miss training camp. Both schools deep into it. Big scrimmage day coming up for Ole Miss on Saturday, and we're going to hit all those topics. Logan, how are you, man?
Doing good. Yeah, we've been on hiatus for the last couple of weeks, but Parrish and I have both been back at it for the last couple of weeks as well with the start of training camp and things like that. They're about 2 weeks into it now, and Mississippi State's kind of on that same schedule. They're going to hold their second scrimmage on Saturday, and that's always an important one. You know, that's kind of the last chance for some of those guys that are sort of on the fringe of contributing this year. But whether they're going to be dressing out this year or are they going to be on the scout team this year? That's going to be a big important scrimmage for those guys coming up on Saturday.
Well, it is, and we were talking off air, and you mentioned the fact that there aren't a lot of position battles at Mississippi State. That they return a lot of experience, and it's similar in some ways at Ole Miss. They return a lot of guys. The competition is not so much for starting spots as it is just roles to make sure guys are in the playing rotations. Now that's not the same at every position for Ole Miss, but at few positions are there battles in the sense that the loser is not going to play. I mean, the guy who doesn't start still going to be in the playing rotation, still going to have a role, and things are so fluid that that guy might be the starter the second week. You just don't know. They're still finding out about themselves at running back and at linebacker, and we'll talk about that. Let's start with State. Logan, new coach Joe Moorhead. Camp was completely closed under Dan Mullen, and I understand that it's slightly better. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. Now, we're not learning a whole lot, but we do have access this year, which is great for, folks out there shooting video or shooting pictures. And I've went out there with the camera a few times and got a few snapshots because for some reason it's tough to get pictures of offensive linemen or anybody that plays defense. Usually the only pictures we get of folks that play defense are of their back chasing somebody else from the other team that's got the ball. So, those are hard to come by. So I was trying to get a few shots of those offensive linemen and defensive players. But, other than that, there's really not a whole lot you can learn out there. We do see different guys that are banged up that day that are in the injury pit. They kind of keep those guys off to the side, and there's always a strength coach over there working those guys out. In fact, those guys look like they're working harder than the guys out there on the field. So it looks like it's almost punishment to get hurt. And, it's always been that case. That's nothing new with Moorhead. It's they call it the injury pit, and they've got some exercise bikes and big old tire and a sledgehammer over there. It's all kinds of stuff over there. But, that's really all we learn. I mean, all we're seeing during the periods that are open to the media, it's just guys working on individual drills, wide receivers running routes and catching passes from the quarterback. You got running backs, going through their little shuttle drills and stuff like that, and offensive linemen hitting sleds and defensive linemen hitting sleds and stuff like that. That's really all we're seeing. So there's not a whole lot, receivers catching balls off the jugs machine. So you really just don't learn a whole lot out there. They're not even going in a particular order. So you're not seeing the starters first and the newcomers last. Typically that's what you see, but yeah, it's not always the case. Sometimes those lines get shuffled as guys step out to get water or whatever. So, it's really not a whole lot we're gaining out there. But, like you said, there's not a whole lot of position battles for Mississippi State right now. I mean, left tackle a little bit. Greg Island started a few games last year when Martinez Rankin got hurt. He's coming in. That's really the only spot that's open on the offensive line right now. And Greg Island's battling out with a JUCO transfer and Tyree Phillips, who transferred in from EMCC last year and redshirted. So those guys, and both of those guys have been banged up at different points in camp. So one guy's missed today and the other guy had to fill in and vice versa. So that's really one of the only spots on the offense where they've been any type of position battle because they've got so many guys coming back. Kind of the same thing on defense. Most of those guys are back on that side of the ball. So, really not a whole lot of position battle. Really, maybe the one position battle that is the biggest is punter. And that's probably the most, where the most competition actually is at the punter spot. Mississippi State's got Tucker Day, who was a high school All-American. He was actually a place kicker for the first 2 games last year, and then we didn't see him a whole lot. He didn't punt at all last season, but that's what Mississippi State signed him for, was actually to be a punter, and he was the #1 punter in the country coming out of high school, and Mississippi State signed him and turned him into a place kicker his first year. So he burned a complete year of eligibility to kick in 2 games. So it wasn't really a smart decision by Dan Mullen, but Jace Christman came on and kind of took over that place kicking role. So Tucker Day was on the bench for the rest of the last year. So he's competing with Cody Schexnayder. We've seen Schexnayder a couple of times, mostly 2 years ago when Logan Cook got hurt. He came on and punted for the rest of the season that year, and we saw him. I think he kicked once or twice last year. So Schexnayder has a little bit of game experience. Tucker Day, the former high school All-American, the guy that's actually on scholarship, is competing for that spot. And I asked Joe Moorhead about that, just which guy, how they're kind of looking in camp so far. And he said you're just looking for consistency from both of those guys. I think they're kind of hit and miss. They'll boom one, and they both got really strong legs, but they'll also shank a few here and there. So he's looking for that consistency, and he said that battle's probably going to go down to the wire. Probably into even game week is just who can be the most consistent, and that's the guy they're going to roll with.
Well, I'll tell you, Logan, that, again, there aren't just a lot of jobs on the line at Ole Miss right now, but I think the most intriguing battles have been at linebacker, where there are starting jobs on the line. But again, the guys who finish second in these races for starting jobs at linebacker are going to play. John Sumrall, first-year coach, new linebacker coach, assistant on Matt Luke's staff, told us earlier this week he feels like he's got 6 or 7 guys competing for 4 or 5 spots. And what's most interesting about that race right now is that Dietrich Bing Dukes, who they had as the starter at middle linebacker, a senior guy who's played a lot of football at Ole Miss, he has dropped. And if you're just watching, and we do see a little bit more. So we see first and second units running together. And this week in practice, Bing Dukes was not even among the top 2 teams. He was getting more like third-team reps if he was getting reps at all. He has kind of fallen off. Now, Bing Dukes is a big guy at 254 pounds, very physical hitter when he's in position, and he knows the game and the scheme, and he's going to be in position most of the time, but he is a liability when a talented offensive coordinator matches him up and makes him play in space and guard the pass. And I think that's something that has hurt him in this competition. But while Bing Dukes, the senior, has fallen off, the guy who's risen is a surprise here. We talk about the young linebackers at Ole Miss because they've recruited so much to this position in recent seasons. It has been a weak spot, and they've evaluated that as such, and they've tried to get some new talent in there. It hasn't been a redshirt freshman or a sophomore that's really burst onto the scene. It's been a true freshman in Cavante Ruggs, about 6'4", 190. We hear them talk about Ruggs, and what we hear is game speed. He's playing at a fast level. So, fast is good, Logan, but sometimes you can go fast in the wrong direction. They think he's doing that minimally, and they think they'll have enough experience out there with him to get him pointed in the right direction. Now, whether Ruggs is a starter on game day, he's a starter right now. He's been running first team this entire week. This was a change that came about after last Saturday's scrimmage. We'll see. Still a lot in play for those linebackers, but right now the first group has been Ruggs at the outside spot and Muhammad Sanogo at the middle linebacker spot. And this is a guy, a sophomore now, maybe could have redshirted last year, didn't play a great amount, but he's a sophomore. They've invested a lot of time with him, a lot of reps. There have been times in camp where he's run first team middle linebacker. He's run first team and outside linebacker. There was a spell where he was running outside next to Bing Dukes. And during that time, while he was first team at outside linebacker, he was second team at middle linebacker. So this is a guy that they've repped at both positions, a lot of time invested in Muhammad Sanogo, and right now it's he and Cavante Ruggs, and behind him any number of people, but Zy Baker, Zakarian Baker from Minden, Louisiana, a redshirt freshman, has kind of risen. They like the physicality that they see in Baker. Logan, one of the big plays of camp that have stood out to me that we did see in our media viewing periods, they ended practice one day with, I guess they call it the board drill or something like that, just a very physical one-on-one kind of drill. This was there was no board involved here, but there were a couple of cones backed up behind you about a yard, and the cones represented the goal line. And basically, the defender was 1 yard ahead of the goal line, and it was his task to stop the running back, or the running back conversely to get in the end zone, find a way to score. Well, Baker just put a tremendous hit on Eric Swinney, who will probably end up being the number 2 running back. So a guy who's played and is going to get some reps is going to figure in one of their better backs. Just a tremendous hit, and then strip the ball. So a huge play, and then he followed that up. Obviously had a big scrimmage, and that elevated him in the eyes of the coaching staff as well. So lots of bodies at linebacker. We'll see how that all shakes out, but at the end of the day, I think Ole Miss is going to end up being more athletic there, and we'll see if they are in position and can make plays, and how these linebackers fit into improving the run defense, because that's the ultimate goal here for a team that gave up 245.3 yards a game on the ground last year. Other side of the ball, running back, I mentioned Swinney. I think he'll end up being the number 2 guy, but I kind of think that number 2 is going to be done by committee, even though that was something that Phil Longo shied away from in conversations earlier this week. He says, there will be a role for different guys, and that's important. But he says it's also important that this team have in what he calls 2 premier guys. I just don't think Swinney has done enough to really hold that number 2 position by himself. We'll see. We've seen a lot of reps for Armani Linton from Walmart, not from Walmart, Logan. They didn't just go and pick up a running back, but they moved Armani Linton, the former Walnut star up in Tippah County, moved him to running back in the spring. He had been a defensive back for 2 years, a safety. A lot of reps for Linton right now in camp. Seeing him a little bit more than we're seeing Isaiah Woolard. And Woolard was a true freshman that they really praised in the spring. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But the guy really to keep an eye on at running back, as far as the reserves go, is going to be Tylen Knight. If you are a recruiting watcher, you know that Knight was All-State for Class 6A champion Pearl, and did a lot of things, offense, defense, and special teams for that program, for that high school team. He's only 5'6", 171, so he's not a big guy. Logan, he had only one FBS scholarship offer, and that was Ole Miss. But he comes in, and you can see the athleticism, and we see them investing time with Tylen Knight. There's going to be a role for Tylen Knight, and it's not going to only be running around the end or trying to get to the corner. Obviously, what comes to mind with this guy is a swing pass out of the backfield, make somebody miss. And when you get a couple of big physical receivers like A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf out there blocking for him, and the tight ends, and, this guy can be elusive. So I think you're going to see some of that from Tylen Knight. I don't think he's going to be in a situation where Phil Longo looks at him and says, okay, you're the guy on this drive, or you're the guy in this second quarter. I don't think there's going to be that. But again, I'm not sure Swinney has done enough to become the guy behind Scotty Phillips, the junior college transfer, who, while they haven't anointed him the starter, haven't called him that, just the things that you see, the things that you hear kind of lead you to that conclusion. So that's the running back situation. The other guy, Logan, who has been a big storyline in camp, has been Ben Brown on the offensive line, a redshirt freshman, a member of that 2017 class, kind of a three-star guy, not a guy who was among the top players at his position nationally, may have been a little overlooked. Matt Luke loves this guy. He was the offensive line coach, Luke was, when he was recruiting Ben Brown. And Brown now, as a redshirt freshman, has run first team at right guard from the beginning of camp. That in and of itself is not completely unusual, but it is when you're playing ahead of a senior who has like 18 to 20 career starts and many, many more snaps at right guard, game action on the field that Brown does not have. But Brown has held this position. I've always maintained, Logan, that you know how reluctant coaches are to use a newcomer over a guy who has had the amount of experience that Jordan Sims has had. You know, they really value experience. It's hard to pull the trigger on that. It's still possible that Matt Luke could choose to slide Jordan Sims back over to right guard with that first unit. When it comes game time, we'll see. Nothing has indicated that right now. Sims has been working at number 2 center behind Sean Rawlings. That's a place they would like to create some depth. They needed that depth last year when Rawlings had some health issues and it wasn't there for them. So I think that's something they're taking care of with Jordan Sims right now. And yeah, it's possible they could move him over and him become the starter at right guard for Texas Tech when they open September 1st in Houston. But there's nothing that has indicated that so far. And, you know, as I do, opening day is coming into view, and pretty soon these teams will be into game week preparations. And that's when you want to make sure you know who your starters are and you're repping those guys.
Yeah, and and I'll talk about a couple of guys that I'm looking to see more from this year. We saw Kylan Hill from Columbus, the running back, 4-star guy, highly rated recruit coming out of high school, played immediately. Even with all the depth that Mississippi State had last year at running back, they still found a way to get that true freshman on the field. And he had flashes last year. I mean, big physical back, can kind of do it all. Had speed with that size, but they wanted to lean him down some. That was kind of the one of the things that Charles Huff, the new running backs coach, said was you could be a whole lot faster and a lot more athletic if you get that book bag full of bricks off your back. And that's really what they wanted to do. They slimmed him down some. They kind of reproportioned some of that muscle that he had. They just got his weight kind of shifted a little bit. So he looks a lot better out there on the field, and I'm expecting to see more from him. I mean, obviously that staff had a huge amount of success last year, over the last couple of years actually, with Saquon Barkley at Penn State. And I think that Kylan Hill, out of all the backs that Mississippi State has, kind of has the best position to be that next Saquon Barkley. I don't know that he's going to be that good because there's going to be so many backs kind of shifting around. Obviously, they got a 1,000-yard back and Eris Williams back, and still got a 4-star back and Nick Gibson as well. So they're loaded at the running back position, and they're going to have to split carries kind of with all those guys. But I think Kylan Hill has the most potential to end up being a Saquon Barkley type running back before it's all said and done. Now, granted, he's just a true sophomore, so he's still got plenty of time to develop at Mississippi State. And Eris Williams will still be the starter. He's a senior. Then they got Dontavian Lee, who's coming back at that spot too. So they're loaded at running back. They're loaded at just about every position on the roster. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of spots that are up for debate as far as who the starter is going to be. There's going to be some shuffling around with the depth beyond the start, in that second and third team group, and we'll kind of see how that all shakes out in the next couple of weeks. But tight end's another spot. They've got 7 scholarship tight ends on the roster right now. That's a lot, Parrish. That is an awful lot. And talking to Mark Hudspeth, the new tight ends coach, he wants, after this Saturday scrimmage, he wants to narrow that down to 4 guys. So he's going to take 4 of those 7 are going to be playing this year. That's the guys he's going to get ready for game day. And one of those could be a true freshman. He really likes what he's seen from Quervius Spivey and Brad Cumbus. He really likes both of those guys and wants to play one of them this year. So that means one of those upperclassmen, or one of those guys that's been there for a couple of years, is going to be out of a job here pretty soon, whether that's Dante Jones or Christian Roberson or Powers Warren. all those guys have a couple of years in the program now. Roberson and Jones didn't play very much at all last year. Those are redshirt sophomores, and then you've got Powers Warren, who's a redshirt freshman. So, some of those guys may be the odd man out in this situation. So, but the first two guys, Justin Johnson and Farad Green, got a lot of experience there. Farad Green started all 13 games for Mississippi State last year. Justin Johnson has really been one of the surprises of fall camp so far. He's I really think he fits in this offense. And if you look at what what Joe Moorhead's offense has been over the last couple of years, at Penn State, the tight end's heavily involved. He was the leading receiver. I think the tight end's been the leading receiver 2 out of the last 3 years in Joe Moorhead's offense. So they're going to throw the tight end a lot. And Justin Johnson, being a former high school wide receiver, I think is really going to benefit from this new change in offense.
Logan, a couple of names to watch for Ole Miss that people might not be aware of right now. One, a late addition to the signing class, kind of an April signee, Tarequius Tisdale, the junior college transfer defensive end from Northwest Community College. Got his grades in order. They were able to officially announce him just the day before camp started, and it's clear from the very beginning. It has been clear that they want to get Tisdale ready to play. Yeah, he's a big guy. He made a name for himself behind the line of scrimmage last year, really applying a lot of pressure, and they're trying to replace Marquise Haynes, a strong pass rushing defensive end. And they think they have that with several defensive ends in the mix here. Kader Shepard, the Syracuse transfer, is healthy now. He's one of them. They believe he's been their best pass rushing defensive end in camp. But it's Tisdale that they really are spending a lot of time with, grooming him, getting him ready to play. Kind of a rush job, because he wasn't around for spring. He wasn't really around for an off season as well. But they're getting this guy ready to play. He's big and physical. They believe he'll be able to, set that edge and turn that run game back inside and also rush the passer. Another guy on offense, wide receiver Floyd Allen. Logan, Ole Miss has recruited well to wide receiver, has continued to recruit well, and has signed, 4-star kids at that position. But this is a walk-on, a junior college walk-on who came in last year with new wide receivers coach Jacob Peeler from a relationship that these guys had previously. Peeler said, hey, he talked to him, said, man, I got a spot for a walk-on if you want to come. Well, yeah, but, a junior college walk-on was, not really looking to play much in the Ole Miss system, and especially one who got there and was learning a new system and, things like that. So Allen was really behind the 8 ball, but, he's a guy that Jacob Peeler has continued to speak highly of, sing his praises, really likes his work ethic and football IQ. You hear that term tossed around from time to time. Well, you get all those things working for you, Logan, and then all of a sudden, A.J. Brown pulls a hamstring and has been out most of camp. Probably won't return until next week. They think he's close, and it's more precautionary than anything else about holding Brown out right now, as they should. He's one that you just need to wrap in bubble wrap and make sure he's ready on game day. But with A.J. Brown not at practice, it's really created an opportunity for Floyd Allen. And so he has risen above some of that younger talent. He's risen above some of those 4-star signees, guys who have been around and have been getting reps as well, like Braylon Sanders, the sophomore, Miles Battle, Elijah Moore. It's been Floyd Allen in the slot in place of A.J. Brown. And I think you're going to see a role for this guy. I think he has cemented himself in the playing rotation. I mentioned Elijah Moore. He's had a big camp as well. He's running number 2 at that slot receiver. I think he'll get into games also. But keep an eye out for Floyd Allen. He's had a long and difficult road to make it to FBS football. This was a guy who had some economic hardship while growing up in Houston. His family split up while he was there. Had an injury as a high school senior, and so the Division I, the FBS attention that he was getting kind of went away, and he ended up beginning his college career at an NAIA school. Wanted to do more, so he went to junior college, and he was out west, and he started to get noticed by Oregon State, Utah, some of these schools, and by Jacob Peeler when Peeler was at Cal. So there was a previous relationship, and when that opportunity came at Ole Miss, Floyd Allen jumped on it, and things have unfolded for him to, in this camp, put himself in position to play. So we'll see how that shakes out when A.J. Brown returns. You don't usually have a big role for 3 slot receivers, so that might put a little more emphasis on a competition between Allen and Elijah Moore, the freshman. So we'll see how that shakes out. Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage. We thank you for being with us today after a summer break. We'll be back next week. Come in and join us again.